the Vice President J.D. Vance and others did happen last night at the White House, with a source telling CNN that they discussed a number of topics, including the Jeffrey Epstein case and the administration's next steps on that matter. As we've sought to emphasize here, a group that feels like they are missing from the administration's conversations are the survivors of the abuse by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Tonight, my source is a survivor, Annie Farmer. Maxwell recruited her and groomed her when she was just 16 years old. Annie testified at Maxwell's 2021 trial that both Maxwell and Epstein had abused her. And Annie joins me now, along with her attorney, Jennifer Freeman, is back with us. And I'm very grateful to have both of you here tonight because, Annie, I do think this is something that is missing from a lot of the conversation about subpoenas or witnesses or Congress. And, just for everyone to remember, you testified at Maxwell's trial. You were actually the only survivor to do so by your full name. Others did so by pseudonyms, understandably. And I just, one, I want to say thank you for being willing to come back and talk about it. But secondly, I wonder what you want people to know who are at home, who are watching all of this play out with Ghislaine Maxwell tonight.
Well, first, I just want to say thank you so much for having me here and also for the coverage you've been doing centering survivors, because I agree that that's something that hasn't been done nearly enough in these last few weeks. I think that, one thing I think it's important people understand is that this chaotic process that's been unfolding has a real cost for survivors. A central part of trauma is a feeling of a lack of control, and that has certainly been triggered here, and I think has a lot of us feeling, very uneasy, really exhausted by this process. And we are learning things just like everybody else, mostly, through the news, through text from friends. We have not been given any kind of a heads up about things that are happening that are directly related to us. These meetings, even this prison transfer was something I expected we would learn about prior to learning about it in the news, and unfortunately that's not how it has unfolded.
Yeah, when you find out that Ghislaine Maxwell is being moved, which we really haven't been told why or who signed off on that, from this prison in Florida to a lower security federal camp in Texas, I wonder what goes through your mind when you hear that.
Honestly, just even learning that the DOJ would be meeting with her was extremely disturbing. This is someone who has been convicted of sex trafficking, by a jury. She not only procured girls and young women for Epstein, but she also participated in the abuse of minors. And, to hear that they are meeting with her and considering involving her in the investigation after she has been, been a perjurer, it was very confusing and disturbing. And so, the rumors that followed about a possible commutation or pardon are very upsetting. And then with this prison transfer, I think it again feels like she is getting preferential treatment. That sounds like something that's unprecedented, and it's really worrying to us about what might be coming next.
Well, I mean, one of the things she was accused of lying about involved you, and at trial, just so everyone remembers, your mom actually testified that when you went to the ranch in New Mexico in 1996, that Jeffrey Epstein had promised your mom you were going on a retreat and that there were dozens of other girls who were going to be there, that Ghislaine Maxwell was his wife. And then you got there and you were the only one, I believe is what your mom testified at trial. And so I just think maybe that is part of this, that, we've heard some people describing Ghislaine Maxwell, I actually know people who are on the far right describing Ghislaine Maxwell as the victim here.
Yeah, I have seen that as well. I think this attempt to sort of rehab her image in order to potentially, make some sort of commutation more palatable. But I've actually felt, really appreciative of the public's response to that. It feels like that campaign is not working. People recognize that she's a predator, not a victim. And I think that any additional lessening of sentence or negotiation will really be met with a lot of outrage and seen as a sign of some guilt.
If the president's not ruling it out, a pardon, and he just emphasizes that he has the ability to do so, I wonder what you would want to say to him about even considering that.
Yeah, I just would want him to know it would be devastating for the victims of Epstein and Maxwell. I mean, this was the one person who was held accountable for these crimes, and she was held accountable for her crimes, not for someone else's, but for the ones that she committed. And I think there's many other ways for him to move forward with this that would actually be indicative of him not being involved, that would not involve her, right? Releasing more information as people are clamoring for. I think anything that involves her participation would be seen as a sign of guilt.
And Jennifer, you're with us here as well. When you just watch how all this is playing out, do you get the sense that the administration is listening, or that Republicans, as they're fighting for this, or fighting about this, I should say, that they're listening to stories like Annie's when they're listening to all of this?
I'm afraid not, which is really upsetting to other survivors. Obviously, Annie has spoken beautifully, but many others have told me how upsetting this is. It feels like a betrayal. It feels atrocious to them, and it's hard to stomach.
You have a subconscious mind. You're unconscious mind, which is the most powerful part of your mind.
The stomach.
Annie, I mean, one comment that we heard from the president yesterday was, this is being pushed by the Democrats, that it's a hoax, that it's BS. As someone who lived it and experienced it, and as a survivor, I wonder what you make of that.
It's offensive. This is not a hoax. There have been so many people that have come forward and shared their stories. I hate that it has been politicized the way it has, because I think we lose sight of the bigger picture in that. And I think this is really about people using their power to harm others, and that is not a political issue. I think people on both sides care about the safety of children, and I really hope that that Trump understands that a message is being sent beyond just the individuals involved in this case to the wider community about how about the seriousness of these types of crimes.
And Annie, where do you personally come down on the calls to release everything? Do you agree with that?
Yes, I'm definitely supportive of more transparency in this case. My sister has filed this lawsuit in order to have more information released as to why her 1996 FBI report, why nothing was done, right? That's something that has been so upsetting for us, to know how many people were harmed that didn't need to be if there had been more follow-up at that time. And a piece of this case that hasn't gotten a lot of attention is the fact that, when she was assaulted, there were also photos that were stolen from her. She was an artist, she was a figurative artist, and she took photos of myself and my sister, partially nude photos, to work from, as a lot of artists do. But those photos were stolen by Maxwell and Epstein, and we've never been told, even though we know that photos have been found, we've never been told, were our photos a part of that? We would like to know, of course, if that is the case. And I think that's the kind of thing transparency might bring. It's more information for people involved.
Yeah. Well, and when you ask those questions, does anyone answer? What kind of response do you get?
So far, there hasn't been a lot of official response, to our queries. Even in this, I reached out to the prosecutors who, who got the guilty verdict for Maxwell, saying, what's going on? And, they knew so little because they have not been involved in this process. So I wrote a letter to Deputy Attorney General Blanche saying, these are my concerns about what's happening, and there has not been a response. So, I know, speaking with other survivors in this case, that even though so many politicians are talking about this, I don't think anyone has actually been contacted.
So
by
you reached
anyone.
out to the Deputy Attorney General, and you haven't heard back?
Yes.
Wow. Jennifer Freeman, Annie Farmer. Annie, Jennifer, I spoke with you last night, and thank you again for your time. But Annie, I just want to reemphasize, I'm really grateful for you being willing to come on and talk about this and have such an important conversation. So thank you.
Thank you.